I'm Brett Michael Phillips from MIT, and I'm here to talk to you today about the difference between this quantum field technology, the movement feedback holography, the beaming with energy, the consciousness shifting, versus the more conventional, better understood self-improvement systems, law of attraction, hypnosis, energy healing, subconscious clearing, things like that. So I'm going to walk you through these 3 generations of consciousness technology to highlight the differences. Now, if you've already been through my video on the 3 generations of consciousness technology, this will be a lot easier for you. It'll make a lot more sense faster. If you haven't, you might want to circle back and check out that video later. So before I get into the details, I do need to emphasize, I'm not saying that the older, more conventional technologies are worthless. I'm not saying that they don't work or that there's something wrong with them. Not at all. I'm just saying they have limits. And I want you to understand what those limits are so you can find the best processes and teachers to move you forward in your life. Because the fact is, the 3rd generation work, the quantum field work, has limits and drawbacks too. And I'm going to lay that out for you. So we're going to do this with a little tour of how I learned about this stuff, which is very similar to how most people go through it. So I first got involved with what I would call the 1st gen technologies: mind power, positive thinking, law of attraction, affirmations, conventional therapy, things like that, back in the 90s when my life totally cratered, when I was going through my dark night of the soul. And it was a really tough time because I had gone in just a couple years from being on top of the world. I was one of the world's leading internet experts when I left grad school at MIT, right at the start of the internet boom. I was literally one of the people that wrote some of the code that is the foundation, the underpinnings of the entire modern internet. And I thought I was going to be incredibly successful. Nope, it was a disaster. We'll spare you the drama of my story. Just know that within a few years, I ended up in terrible chronic pain from injuries and illness. I was put on permanent disability at 27. My lifelong best friend and business partner betrayed me, stole the multi-million-dollar company I had founded with my own blood, sweat, and tears and built up with my sacrifices, stole it from me, sold it for millions of dollars, pocketed the money. And I also had a terrible broken heart because the same guy, my ex-best friend, had also been secretly dating the woman I was crazy in love with. And I was left living with my parents in terrible pain because some days I was in so much pain I couldn't even cut my food or eat a meal. That's how bad it was for me. But I was very lucky that I had some friends turn me on to positive thinking. Nowadays we call it the law of attraction. It's all the same stuff, right? And so I'd go to positive thinking weekends and jump around on the stage and shout out how I was going to be a millionaire and heal my body and find love and have this amazing life. And I joined mastermind groups and I made a vision board. I put power words on my walls. I remember I said my mantras 108 times a day like clockwork because someone had told me, hey Brent, if you say your mantras 108 times every single day for a year, it has to become true. So I was doing all this stuff. And honestly, it didn't do anything for me in terms of results. Now, to be fair, it wasn't all bad because I was very depressed. I was full of anxiety. I was in a lot of pain. And so it was certainly better for me to be in a seminar room, jumping on the stage, shouting out that I'm a millionaire, than it was for me to be sitting in my parents' basement, day drinking, using drugs, thinking about killing myself. So that's the honest truth. So it was good in the sense that it redirected me away from something that could have been much more destructive. But it did not make me money. It did not heal my body. It didn't really move my life ahead. It just kind of helped me to not sink deeper into the darkness. Fast forward a bunch of years, I have the experience when my paralyzed arm instantly heals in that first session with Terry. That was my introduction to the 2nd generation of consciousness technology. When you get into working with the subconscious directly, using muscle testing to check for blocks, using energy healing to do subconscious clearing, accessing a theta state in your brain. That waking theta brainwave is really important. Learning how to do healings, learning how to do a manifestation from the theta state, soul fragment retrieval, cutting cords, doing intuitive readings, clearing space, clearing out entities. So this was very helpful for me, this 2nd generation work, because it really did help to move my life forward. My elbow instantly healed. I was able, with a lot more work and clearing, to reduce my physical pain significantly. I was able to get back to work with a new career as a professional healer. So it did a lot for me, but there were still a lot of limitations. And so Long story short, the first generation technologies, conventional talk therapy, law of attraction, positive thinking, coaching, they're very useful, but they're limited by the confines of the subconscious. In other words, if you have a bunch of subconscious blocks to money, you believe you have a vow of poverty, or that money is the root of all evil, or that rich people are greedy, or any of these other beliefs, right? All the coaching and masterminds and jumping on the stage in the world isn't going to overcome that. So that's kind of the limitations of the first generation, is too much ego, too much head, too much mind, too much talking. Worth doing, for sure. Then you get into the second generation where you start to clear the subconscious. Definitely better, more powerful, but it still has limits. Here's the biggest limit you run into. You can only change the subconscious code within the framework of what your subconscious code allows. And the reason is that all the first and second gen technologies, again, conventional talk therapy, law of attraction, life coaching, things like EFT, emotion code, body code, Psych K, anything involving muscle testing, hypnosis, NLP. These are good things that can help you, but they're all done from the mind. And so you're only allowed to work with what the mind can comprehend and name. And so that limits you to what you can do. Still worth doing. It's a good foundation, if nothing else. So I think it's worth doing, but it's only going to take you so far. In my experience, what happened was when I got into the first gen, it kept me from a drug overdose or from committing suicide. And so I know that may sound dramatic, but that's the truth of my life. It did help me in that sense. It didn't move me forward, but it helped me from not sliding back further and going into the darkness so far I could never return. The second gen, clearing the subconscious, energy healing, manifesting the theta state, developing intuition, was very useful. It did heal a lot of my physical issues. It did help me with the depression, the anxiety. It helped me to find some purpose in life. It gave me a new career. But there's a lot of things it couldn't do. It couldn't get me out of my head. It couldn't break this really pervasive, dark, negative, pessimistic worldview I had. And most importantly, it couldn't really help me make a big breakthrough with money or with love. And so it's interesting. In some of my other videos, I'm going to talk more about the subconscious financial thermostat and how we create our reality in terms of money. It's fascinating to me that if you look at the last salary I drew as a software engineer in the 90s before I got put on disability, and then we fast forward 7 years to when I opened my business as a professional healer, I made the exact same amount of money. Pretty crazy, right? It wasn't intentional, that's just how it happened. Why? The subconscious clearing, the traditional energy healing, was very helpful to get me off of disability and working again, but I couldn't make a breakthrough. I was still living from my mind. And so one of the lessons I want to talk about more in a later video, but the gist of it right here is this: the mind is not your enemy, it's your ally. And this is why the first generation talk therapy, coaching, law of attraction can be helpful. Because you have to give the mind a new framework to understand how life really works. Otherwise, it will resist and fight you moving forward. So the mind is not your enemy, it's an ally. The problem with an ally is your allies often have different priorities, different ideas than you do, even though your big picture goal is the same. Winston Churchill, who was the Prime Minister of Great Britain during World War II, famously said something along the lines of, the most difficult thing for him wasn't defeating Nazi Germany in the war. It was dealing with all his damn allies. He had to deal with the Americans, and he had to deal with the Russians and the Free French and all these other people, right? So that's what the mind is. It's not our enemy, it's our ally. So talk therapy and coaching is very useful to help get the mind on your side, but it's not going to create the huge breakthroughs. At least it didn't for me. I wasn't able to triple my income. I wasn't able to reduce my hours. I wasn't able to find self-esteem, self-confidence, or really start enjoying life. And so that's why I needed the third gen technology. And I'm going to talk about the quantum field a little bit. And by the way, it has limitations and drawbacks too. It's not better in every way, it's just different. Just like your brand new modern sleek cell phone with 1 billion gigabytes of RAM and a 1 trillion pixel camera is not in every way better than a phone from 5 years ago. In some ways, it's more difficult to use. It may be heavier, consume more power, right? So the third gen is not in all ways better, it's just different. So here's what happened to me. 5 years of using the more conventional energy healing with the theta waves, subconscious clearing, manifesting, intuition, clearing soul fragments, radiation, entity clearing. It helped me for sure, but it didn't make the big breakthrough. I was still unhappy. I was still depressed. I wasn't suicidal like I'd been before, but I had more of a death wish. I kind of wanted my life to be over because it was still so full of pain. I was still struggling. And I even ended up going bankrupt. Why? I was still living entirely from the mind. The trouble with the second gen technology and the first gen is it's all done from the ego. And very few people know how to break out of that. And so what is the ego? Simply it's that which defines you as separate and different than everything else in the universe that is not you. So when you think about your body, your career, your bank account, your intuition, that all comes from ego. What we need to do is wake up to the truth through this process of what I call awakening. Others would call it Advaita Vedanta or Jnana Yoga or non-duality. It is our gateway into the fifth dimension. You will find spacelessness. You will find timelessness. You will find simply being present. And that's not something that conventional hypnosis or NLP or energy healing or law of attraction can do for you. In martial arts, they call it Mushin, which is no mind. And it's interesting, I've really got my introduction to spirituality as a young man through martial arts. Martial arts was something that kept me sane when I was at MIT. It was my break to exercise my body and my spirit and let my analytical mind take a rest. And so I studied Taekwondo, ended up getting a black belt. I studied Aikido, I studied Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I studied Nei Kung, I studied a lot of different other things, a little bit of Shotokan Karate, a little bit of Wing Chun. I'm not saying I'm an expert at these things, but it introduced me to these ideas such as the Japanese concept of Mushin No Mind, where you're simply present, taking action without thinking. That's what we need to really break through to the third generation. That's the quantum field entrainment. This beaming process, which I can only do with you live, at least in a meaningful way. It really doesn't work on the recording, which, by the way, is one of the limitations of the third generation. It does not work as well on recordings. The second gen work, energy healing, block clearing, muscle testing, even physical healings, I can record. And you can play them back 3, 5, 20 years later and they work just as well. The quantum field work does not translate to the recording, not nearly as well. You lose 80% of the power. This is why I'd encourage you, if you haven't done so already, make sure you slam like, make sure you slam subscribe. Awesome. Let's give you a little reward. Here's another really awesome picture of outer space. All right, cool. So it's important that if you really want to experience this third gen, you come on a live event with me. Not that I don't want to show it to you through YouTube, I just can't. I don't know how. That is a limitation of the technology. I don't know how to take you deep into the quantum field through a recording. If I did, I'd save myself a lot of time and money on live webinars and just make a recording. So if you haven't done so yet, also check out my spiritual power quiz, URL right here on the screen. There you go. You do the spiritual power quiz, find your spiritual power. I'm going to send you an invitation to experience this live with me because you really need to do it live. So when we get into the third generation, we start to dissolve the ego. We start to see past it. We start to reconnect to this field of life around us, not as you as the human, but you as pure awareness. And I'm throwing a bunch of words at it, and it may or may not resonate with you today. If it doesn't, that's okay. For a lot of us, we have to hear this 3, 5, 20, 50 times before one day, poof, it sinks in, right? You also need to get you involved with a movement feedback holography. And I am going to make some YouTube videos showing what I can, but you'll hear me say a lot, you can't learn karate from a book. Same thing with the movement. I'll show you what I can through the videos, but at some point you got to get with a teacher. And this will allow you to get your consciousness back into your body. And another really important thing to break into the third gen is something you've heard a million times before. And it's pretty straightforward and easy. It's you have to surrender. You have to be willing to surrender the content of your life. You have to be willing to let go of this need to constantly manipulate and scheme and plan to try to force the universe to give you more money or to force you to give you more health. This is the trap that we fall into, the trap of the ego. You think, oh, if I can just figure the right thing to do, I'm going to make the universe give me what I want. Good luck with that, right? It's interesting that for me, it was around the year 2000 when I was just really getting in the swing of the first gen stuff, right? Going to law of attraction weekends, though they called it positive thinking then, the mantras, the affirmations, vision boards. I went to a very spiritual medical doctor, and he told me what I needed to know, but I couldn't hear it at the time. He said, Brent, to move your life ahead is simple. You just have to surrender everything. You just have to be willing to let it go and trust the divine. That's one of our keys to accessing the quantum field. You got to be willing to let go of the ego, the mind, the body, the bank account. Now, at the time, I couldn't hear it. And why? I just wasn't ready. That's okay. I remember thinking to myself, okay, buddy, surrender's easy for you, right? You got a medical degree, you got a thriving practice, you got a hot wife, you got some money, right? You have 2 homes. Of course, surrender's easy for you. But that's why I'm saying I couldn't hear his message. It's not about making it easier. It's not about being here or there. It's not about having or not having money. It's about letting go of the need to control and manipulate. And when you're willing to do that, then you can start to transcend the ego. And here's what it comes down to. The first gen work, the talk therapy, the coaching, the law of attraction, the vision boards, worth doing for sure. But it's only a foundation for most people. We're going to build on that foundation. The second gen, you get into energy healing, clearing subconscious blocks, doing subconscious downloads, through whatever modality you like. You may want to do it with my technology, which I think is really awesome, right? But I'm biased. You could use NLP or hypnosis or emotion code or body code. There's all sorts of cool stuff out there. Worth doing because that's building a stronger foundation. But at some point, you got to be willing to surrender the ego. You got to be willing to let go of how you think your life should be and trust the divine plan. That will allow you to reconnect into this quantum field. That makes you present. It makes you embodied. That is the key to luck. In case you didn't know, luck is the quantum field. Why does life break your way sometimes but not others? It's how connected you are. And how do we get there? Well, it's pretty simple. Again, if you haven't already subscribed, go subscribe. Please do so. If you haven't already liked it, go like it. If you haven't done my spiritual power quiz, here's the URL again. Come to a live event with me. I think you'll love it. So much more I can do live that I can't do on the YouTube. But we gotta be willing to surrender. And you gotta find a guide, someone who knows how to guide you through this process. The fact is, there's many, many, many people through history that spent their whole lives chasing awakening and never found it. Why? They didn't have the right teacher. They didn't have the right guide. There's many, many, many people through history who were trying to find the secrets to unlock and understand and use the quantum field, and they never found it. Why? They didn't have the right teacher. They didn't have the right guide. Rumi famously said, a journey of 3 weeks will take 100 years without a guide. And if you like my content, if you like my style, awesome. Watch some more videos. Come to my website. Come to my events. I would love to be your guide. But I'm not for everybody. I'm pretty intense. I'm all about the truth. I'm all about what works. I'm not going to give you a big hug and tell you it's okay. I'm not about the kumbaya or the new age stuff. You're not going to see me in robes or crystals or any of that. Again, I'm not opposed to it. It's just not me. I'm a just the facts engineer, straight to the truth, science, rational thinking, what really works. But whoever you go to, please find a guide, please find a teacher, learn everything you can from them, and then go find your next teacher. And you'll find that over time, you will naturally move through all these generations of technology. Similar to the scale of consciousness from Hawkins, you can't skip steps, you gotta go one by one. Or spiral dynamics, another wonderful model. Find your teacher, find your guide, find your framework, and then if none of the stuff I'm saying today makes any sense to you, bookmark this, come back in a year, 2 years. I think you'll be shocked at how much of what you really needed to know is present here, but just like me with that doctor 20 years ago, you couldn't hear it. But if you can, even better. So I know this was a little more meandering than some of my other videos, but I had so many things I wanted to say about this, and I hope you can see I'm really passionate about teaching you and guiding you and giving you truth and facts that will really change your life. So I'm going to shut up for now. Brent Michael Phillips here from MIT signing off, and I hope you come back soon because I got some awesome more videos in this channel. We got one more in this series of 7 on the quantum field and a lot more that will be coming right after that. So until I see you online again on YouTube or at one of my live webinars or other events, I hope that you take this information to heart, apply it, get some great results. And until next time, take care and namaste.